NBC's Brian Williams. At least some of the intelligence came from detainees who had at one time been waterboarded. But this afternoon, the White House refused to get any more specific.
Information was gathered from detainees. We have multiple ways of gathering information, from detainees, from different methods that we have of getting information. The work that was done to put the case together was done primarily by analysts gathering tiny bits of information and putting it together and creating a body of work, if you will, that led to the finding of the location where Osama bin Laden was hiding.
Senator John McCain offered this today after leaving a classified intelligence briefing.
So far, I know of no information that was obtained which would have been useful by, quote, enhanced interrogation.
But in a new interview with Time magazine, a former head of counterterrorism at the CIA during the Bush era, Jose Rodriguez, says the enhanced interrogation techniques used on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Abu Faraj al-Libi were indeed what eventually led to bin Laden. And joining those claiming a win for torture tactics, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld.
I think that anyone who suggests that the enhanced techniques, let's be blunt, waterboarding, did not produce an enormous amount of valuable intelligence just isn't facing the truth. The facts are, General Mike Hayden came in. He had no connection with waterboarding anybody. He looked at all the evidence and concluded that a major fraction of the intelligence in our country on al-Qaeda came from individuals, only three people who were waterboarded.
Joining me now, Matthew Alexander, a former senior military interrogator who conducted or supervised over 1,300 interrogations in Iraq, leading to the capture of numerous al-Qaeda leaders and the killing of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. His latest book is Kill or Capture: How a Special Operations Task Force Took Down a Notorious al-Qaeda Terrorist. And we should note, Matthew Alexander is a pseudonym he uses for obvious security reasons. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Lawrence.
Now, you just heard Donald Rumsfeld say that anyone who suggests that the enhanced techniques waterboarding did not produce an enormous amount of valuable intelligence just isn't facing the truth. Did we get an enormous amount of valuable intelligence from waterboarding?
Well, what former Secretary Rumsfeld should explain to us then is how come we didn't find or locate Osama bin Laden back when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded in 2002 and 3 after his capture, and when these other detainees were exposed to enhanced interrogation techniques. Those techniques ended years ago. It never resulted in the critical pieces of information that would have handed us bin Laden and his exact location. This notion that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed gave us a critical piece, first of all, it came a year after he was waterboarded, so it wasn't those techniques that got that information. But what he gave us was a nickname of a courier that bin Laden used, and that nickname was Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. Now, if you understand the way al-Qaeda operates, they often use nicknames to indicate positions, not people. It's the equivalent of saying, you know, somebody's a loggy to indicate they're a logistician in the United States Army. So that information is not particularly useful when you're trying to locate somebody, to name them, get their real name, their location, and then to follow them to your target.
Now, here's what makes no sense to me. The administration that says, as Rumsfeld did just then, we got enormous amounts of valuable intelligence from waterboarding. That is the same administration that ends waterboarding. This thing that's enormously valuable. They say, you know what, it's enormously valuable, but we're not going to do it anymore because we don't need it. Why would you ever stop doing it if it was enormously valuable?
Well, the reason why, and this is what you'll never hear torture advocates talk about, is because of the long-term negative consequences of using torture and abuse, which greatly outweigh any benefit you get from them. I saw in Iraq, when I was overseeing the interrogations of foreign fighters, that the #1 reason they stated for coming to Iraq to fight was because of the torture and abuse of prisoners at both Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay. So we had effectively handed al-Qaeda its #1 recruiting tool, and those statistics were tracked by Department of Defense. I saw them in briefings. And this resulted in the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands, of American soldiers in Iraq. So these torture advocates, they don't want to talk about these long-term costs of having used torture and how they far outweigh any benefit we ever had.
You know, I've always wondered about the torture discussion, whether, in your experience, the opposite of torture might actually work more easily. For example, treating someone very well, giving them the best food and the best blankets and making them most comfortable, and then taking them away. Just taking those things away if they don't cooperate, trying to induce cooperation by giving them goodies.
What I found, Lawrence, is I never had to take things away. What I found is that when I treated people with respect, when I built a relationship of trust, when I changed their attitudes about me as an American interrogator and what I stand for, I was able to get them to cooperate. Our success rate in Iraq for my team was upwards of 80%. I have no doubt that American interrogators are more than capable of defeating al-Qaeda terrorists in the interrogation booth in the battle of wits.
Matthew Alexander, a former senior military interrogator, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your service and your integrity in your service.
Thank you, Lawrence.